Welcome to the Greater Irvine Chamber Business Insights podcast series, where we address challenges and ideas for early stage and entrepreneurial business leaders. Your host today is Dave Cofaro, Interim President and CEO of the Greater Irvine Chamber.
Well, welcome, folks, to the Greater Irvine Chamber of Commerce podcast series. Thanks for being with us today. And at some point in the life of every business, the business's founder needs to make decisions about what type of legal entity structure works best for their specific situation. And knowing what the best structural fit is for a specific business can be complicated. So to help sift through some of the complexity of business legal entity structures, my guest today is attorney John Styskal, and also a member of the Greater Irvine Chamber. So, John, thanks so much for being here. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my to be here. I have a lot of information in my head I learned in law school and practice that I just with people, and everybody really should know this information. So happy to be here to give it out.
Perfect. This is the place for it. So first off, tell us a little bit about your practice, John, a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. We are a family firm. It's my father, my sister, and I who are the attorneys. Well, actually, we just lost my father in January, but we've had his experience from over 50 years he was practicing, and taught my sister and I the best way to take care of our clients and how to do everything. We focus in corporate law, construction defects, and estates. So making sure your whole life is put together properly and is going to flow the way you want it to.
So in that context of helping your whole life flow just the way you want it to, and in context of business, what are some of the most common for-profit legal entity structures that people contemplate, John?
Absolutely. There are a number of them, but the top three that I always see people doing that I usually recommend are going to be either an LLC, a C Corp, or an S Corp. And those are the main corporations that you have that most people would choose.
So why would someone choose one versus the other? What are some of the details behind it, and why would I think one works better for my business than another one?
Absolutely. Now, it all comes down to what your goals are. What do you want to achieve? Are you wanting to stay small? Do you want to just be your operation that you're maintaining? Then I'd probably guide you more to an S Corp. Are you looking to be a big company that you want to have publicly traded, and you really want to maximize your tax incentives on your stocks? Then we might want to look at those LLCs and C Corps. You have all three of them give you liability, which as an attorney, that's my main concern, is making sure you have that liability protection. I misspoke, but so all three of them will contain your liability within the corporation as long as you operate it like a corporation, not as a shell of yourself. But the S Corp gives you a much more efficient way of doing your taxes. Your property comes right through from the corporation into you, and you report it as your income. So you have that benefit there, and that's why the S Corp is attractive to a small business. You don't have other people you need to be concerned about as much. You're just wanting to run this as what you do and take in your profits, report them, and you're good. A LLC gives you a similar kind of pass through on your funding, but it can be a bigger corporation. You have a larger scope that you can do with membership. S Corp has only 100 members that you can have as owners of the corporation, whereas the LLC doesn't have a restriction, but you do have a similar pass through on the taxes there. And then the C Corp, that one is going to be when you're wanting that full public traded, full benefits of all the corporate aspects, that's there, but you're going to be double taxed. You're going to be taxed when the company makes income, and then you're going to be taxed when dividends are paid to the owners. So that's why small corporations want to go to the S Corp, because you're not getting that double tax. Whereas the C Corps, you have different types of stock that you can give out with a C Corp and an LLC that you can't give out with an S Corp. With an S Corp, you're restricted to only one type, And so when you do, say, sell stock to another member, you do have to have a little foresight of knowing that, hey, this is the year that we're doing this. But it's not it's not laborious, It's a fairly simple reporting to the state.
Now, back to the goals and your comments about that. There's obviously income and income tax considerations. I've met a number of people who have maybe 2 or 3 different aspects to their business, and they'll use separate LLCs. I'll give you an example of one that I know. So someone who owns a business and then they decide to put the real estate into an LLC, and then they rent the real estate through their company. And then maybe they've got some other entities. Maybe they've got vehicles or a company that is a partner with them that they put in a separate LLC. What's the thinking behind that and having multiple structures to support a business?
Absolutely. I actually have a client right now that unfortunately they didn't think about this aspect that you're talking about in structuring their company. They just started. They just got going. For example, this company, it's an S corp. Well, they have 3 different trades that they're doing. They're selling equipment, they're installing equipment, and now they're doing e-selling of equipment. And in my opinion, it would be best if those were each their own companies, because especially the installing of equipment, that exposes them to a much higher liability than just selling the products, because now they're actually doing their hands on the work. They are taking steps where if there's a failure, which now there's a higher likelihood of something occurring, that then the client can sue them. And if having all 3 of these trades in the same business makes them equally liable for that one trade's actions. So ideally, if you can split the business into different corporations, you can shelter each aspect of that business from the liabilities of each other. So something like you were saying, putting your real estate in one company and having the operating of the company in another, there can be an agreement between the 2 companies where one is renting the use of that land from the first company that holds the real estate. But then if this company that's using the real estate does something, it's not necessarily going to pass that liability into the real estate corporation. So it's just segregating your liability. I like to tell people it's like you have a forest and you want to do burn lines, to just segregate that forest. So if there is a fire, it's not going to spread across the whole forest. It'll just burn that corner.
That's a really impactful term, segregating liability. And as business owners, we have to think about that risk and be able to separate ourselves from it as much as possible. So I like the way that you described that. And the term sheltering, I really want to highlight that because there could be a negative connotation with it, right? Because you think of like in the old days when people would shelter income to try and avoid taxes. That's not what this is about. This is just prudence and how to manage your liability properly, right? Is that what you find with your clients?
Absolutely. Like you said, there is a negative connotation, like you're trying to hide something. But like the example I gave you where my client has 3 aspects to his business, really those should be 3 separate businesses. It's not that he's trying to hide his responsibility on the installation. Say he does an installation, it has a water failure, it damages the house. Well, they have insurance and they have everything needed to make that mistake correct. But the problem is he has these other businesses that really had nothing to do with the installation of that product. And to make those businesses be liable for that one mistake. I mean, we all have been in a situation where there's been a mistake. We're human beings. That happens. And to have your entire livelihood be wiped out because of one mistake, it's just devastating. You work your entire life to have this reputation and this, buzz and get your licenses all in order. And now because of one mistake over here, the whole thing's gone. So it's really about just recognizing the different aspects of your business and trying to do that as soon as possible, because the problem I'm having with the client that I mentioned to you is he's gotten his contractor's license and notoriety is all under the one name. So it's trying to figure out who do we take out of that name and what are the effects going to be? Either we take out the installation, he can't now use the contractor's license, or we take the selling of equipment out. Well, now he doesn't have the credit and the longevity of the previous company. So it's we're in a pickle right now. We're working through it, but these are why you want to think about this beforehand.
Yeah. That brings up for me something that I talk about often with businesses is I think, and you're putting it in context of legal entity structures, but I think strategy has to come first and then structure. So when I talk about that, I'm usually talking about organizational structure following strategy. What I hear from you is legal entity structure should also follow strategy. Decide what you want to do first, be really clear about that, and then build out the structure that's going to best align with what you want to accomplish. Is that a fair distillation?
Absolutely, absolutely, because you're investing all this time. You're out there hustling. My client, his business has been in operation for 10 years now. So that's 10 years of reputation, credit, business, savvy that he doesn't get credit for on the new business that we create. And so we're really debating on whether or not he should split them up or not. What's the bigger risk? Having the liability bundled or losing those benefits of being a 10-year-old company?
So if we deconstruct this specific example and sort of try and make some broad interpretations of it, at what point in the life of a business should the founder, owner think about choosing the best structure to meet their needs?
You should constantly.
Okay.
It's an ongoing, evolving consideration. You need to sit down at the very onset of your business and really think about what your goals are. So, ideally, you're building the proper foundation for whatever business you're going to build on top of that. Now, things change, goals change. So, to have the proper board meetings to discuss with your members, where are we projecting we're heading, and just checking in to make sure that the original goal is still the current goal. Because, like I said, you want to make those changes as soon as you can. Once you know you want to change direction, that's when you want to do it, because you don't want to waste your time.
That's so important, ongoing and evolving, and that's such an important thing to think about in terms of the legal entity structures. When we think about business, we know whatever your business is, your customers are always changing, their expectations, what they look at as in terms of competitors and things like that. Your technology is always changing. The people who work on your team are always changing. So why would legal entity be any different? Such a powerful point to think of it as sort of this ongoing, living, breathing thing. It's not one and done. It's as things change, evolve to adjust accordingly.
Absolutely.
So I heard you talk a little bit about some of the things that are required by the state, by the government, and so forth. What are some of the ongoing management or administrative requirements for each legal entity type, and how should those come into play as a business owner thinks about choosing the right structure for their company?
Absolutely. What you have is there are financial requirements and then there are reporting requirements. All of the structures require that you pay your dues to the state. You have a yearly annual payment that you need to do. The amount changes depending on what corporation you're having, but they each you need to pay for it to maintain that status. So they all have that financial aspect. The corporations require that you have shareholders meetings. You need to have an annual shareholders meeting. You need to have your bylaws. You need to have your corporate documents ready for inspection, because you are a publicly traded corporation. Well, especially if you're publicly traded, you don't necessarily have to, but the idea is you're getting ready to be traded and sell to others, and the others need to be able to inspect what is going on and see that annual reports are occurring, that the board members are meeting together and making these decisions. So that's what we're working with.
Yeah. There is administration. It's not just set it forget it kind of thing. It's something that requires some thinking about how you're going to maintain those activities, who's going to do what. So important points. You mentioned that you do work in the estate planning area, and it seems like estate planning and legal entity planning kind of go hand in hand. How does a business owner's overall estate plan kind of inform or affect the company's legal entity structure, or does it?
Well, that's the thing. It's, a lot of people feel that whenever I tell people I do estate and corporate, they go, "Wow, how did you get into that? Those seem so far apart." And it's like, well, you want your business interests to pass to your heirs, don't you? What people don't understand is just because you create a trust, which if you have, bravo to you. A lot of people don't. Everybody should, in my opinion. But once you create your trust, your trust talks about what it wants, but it doesn't get to control your business because your business has its own rules on what it's going to do and how things are going to work. So what you need to do is you need to coordinate those two together. Whatever the trust is saying, you need to make sure you then also acknowledge that in your bylaws or your operating agreement. And you kind of have to state, what is the succession going to be? When a partner passes, how does their estate pass? Where is it going to go? I oftentimes will have owners of businesses do a board meeting where they acknowledge their trust and acknowledge your desire to have your interests passed to the trust. So then it can be ratified as part of the corporate documents. And that's what's because I've had clients who just went, "Oh, I want my business to pass to my wife," but they didn't do anything on the corporate side. So the wife is in charge of their trust, but she can't get into the business. And a lot of times, if you can't access the business, now you have payroll that's not being paid. Your employees start walking because probate, which is the process on going through the court to get property transferred into, say, the trust, it is a long and time-consuming process. It can take 3 years before somebody has full possession of a business. So, it's going to at least take 3 to 6 months before they can pay anyone. And you could truly lose your whole staff if you haven't taken the steps to do that succession plan within the business. They need to coordinate with each other because the trust can't control the business and the business can't control the trust. They need to talk to each other.
Probate sounds like a long, drawn-out thing. What's the best way for a business owner to avoid probate?
The best way, if you have a business, make sure your corporate documents state how you want things to be passed on. You can either say, I want a shareholder can have their interests passed per their will or trust, which will be fine. Then it will reference over to the will or trust. Or you can just straight say, I am assigning my interests to my trust when I pass, and name your specific trust. That'll be a little more efficient and faster to get it there. Just naming it in your trust isn't going to do it. You want to have the trust to receive the business, but the business needs to say that it goes over to that trust. So
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of choreography that has to take place here. And hearing you describe probate and how long that can take, and the fact that that means that somebody who's not you is making decisions on behalf of you because you can't make those decisions, probably is not the kind of outcome most business owners want. So your counsel on thinking through these things in advance, I think most people don't like talking about their estate plan. On the other hand, you think about your family members and the folks who are responsible for your business. If you're not here, you're making it better for them, making it easier for them. So really important points.
absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Estate planning is one of those things that everybody knows they need to do, but nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to think about dying. But I always try to make it quick and easy for them. Let's get through it because it's pivotal. You can really be stuck in a hard place if you haven't given the power to the next generation to do anything, then they have to go petition for it. And something I'll let you know is the attorneys get paid very well on a probate. A lot of people don't understand that the law states that the attorney who handles a probate gets paid 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 100,000, and 2% of the next 800,000, 1% of every 100,000 thereafter of the gross of your estate. Some people miss that part, the gross, because you may have, say you have $1 million home, but you have a $900,000 mortgage on it. You're thinking, 4% of 100,000, so be it. No, it's 4% of the, well, 4, 3, 2, 1 of the million, because the attorney gets that mortgage paid off. So that's an interest that's being represented by the estate. So that all comes out. So it can really cost.
Yeah, there's a lot here, which is why working with a trained professional who can help us as business owners navigate this and understand the connection between your business and your estate plan and why that matters. It becomes even more complex if you've got a partner or multiple partners. There's a lot more to it. So strategy first, then structure, and all these things fit together. So, John, as we come to a close, I'm going to ask you the hard question, which is, what one closing thought would you like to leave with our listeners today to just help them when it comes to thinking through their business legal entity structures?
My best thing that I tell people is get your team together. I'm a liability guy. I'm the attorney, so my main focus is liability. I'm aware of taxes. I like to say I'm a tax familiar, but I'm not a tax professional. So we get your CPA, we get your financial planner, you get your attorney, put the team together. I know it can be daunting thinking, oh, this is going to be expensive with all three, but trust me, you're going to save on the back end by having the minds come together and form the perfect structure for you. Your tax guy is going to tell you the best way to get the most profits for you. I'm going to tell you how to protect yourself from your liabilities. And your financial planner is going to tell you how to best maximize your investments and make this whole structure grow together. So get your team together. That's my best advice.
Great advice. And that, with what you already said about it's never too soon to start, and it's an ongoing, evolving thing that we as business owners need to think about, are great takeaways. So, John, thanks so much for being on today's podcast. Appreciate it. And folks, thank you very much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Greater Irvine Chamber Business Insights podcast. To stay informed about upcoming podcasts and other important business news, please subscribe to our channel or check the Greater Irvine Chamber website.